Just a year after the Dallas Mavericks made the conference finals, now they're doing exactly what you and I are doing for the playoffs, watching on TV. After pairing up Luka Doncic with Kyrie Irving, it all went downhill as the Mavericks didn't even make the play-in tournament. They even lost consecutive games to the fourth worst team in the league, the Charlotte Hornets. How did the Mavericks fall off this badly? It's easy to point the finger at Kyrie because the team has played terribly since his arrival. However, there are plenty of guys such as Cuban, Nico Harrison, Jason Kidd, and yes, I'll say it, even Luka Doncic that are more at fault. This whole disaster really started during the offseason by doing nothing to improve the team. The Mavericks seemed to not have any plan. The Mavericks being dead last in rebounding this season didn't help either. They weren't a great rebounding team last year, which was exploited in the conference finals, but this year they plummeted with rebounds. Even though 70% of rebounds go uncontested today, rebounds do still matter. As Pat Riley once said, no rebounds, no rings. To start off, why are Cuban and Nico Harrison more to blame than anyone else? We can start with letting Jalen Brunson go to the New York Knicks and be in contention for most improved player. Maybe the Knicks had some leverage because Brunson's dad is an assistant coach there. The Mavericks are definitely paying a big price for letting Jalen Brunson walk because he just led the Knicks to the second round of the playoffs. Jalen Brunson was already the Mavericks' second leading scorer during the playoffs last year, and they had ample opportunity to re-sign him. Brunson was open to signing the 4-year max worth $55.6 million after losing in the 2021 playoffs, which turns out to be about half of what the Knicks are paying him, by the way, yet the Mavericks didn't even make an offer. Jalen Brunson also approached the Mavericks about a contract extension again in January of last year, but once again the Mavericks declined. Cuban even admits that the Mavericks miss Brunson, but his excuse that the Knicks always had leverage because Brunson's father is an assistant coach for them, it's lame to me. I think he's just playing victim. It certainly didn't get any better when, after losing Jalen Brunson, the first move the Mavericks made was getting 35-year-old JaVale McGee. McGee has had a decent NBA career, but signing him to a 3-year deal was pretty boneheaded. If you sign him to a 1-year deal, that's tolerable, but 3 years for a center not even playing 10 minutes per game instead of a guard, that wasn't very smart. The Mavericks must have thought even with McGee's limited offense, they're still getting a defensive presence. McGee was a strong defensive presence in the past, but he didn't really bring that for the Mavericks, and I can't think of any other reason besides his age catching up with him. Even worse, JaVale McGee is their tallest player as their only 7-footer, and him being a non-factor certainly doesn't help with their inability to rebound. Although McGee has been an okay rebounder for his career, he's at the point in his career where he's not going to play enough minutes to solve the rebounding problem for the Mavericks, so he's just a waste of a roster spot at this point. Another bad move that the Mavericks made was bringing in Christian Wood, who may have shown all-star potential when he was in Houston and still has the ability to score. However, he's also a big reason why the Mavericks went from 6th to 23rd in defense this season. His horrible defense is why he comes off the bench, but he is playing more minutes than Dwight Powell, and it really hurts the Mavericks defense because he can't guard anyone. Dwight Powell isn't really the answer for a great rim protector either though, because he's only 6'9" and doesn't have the physical gifts of someone like Ben Wallace to make up for his lack of size at center. Now let's talk about Kyrie Irving. I don't think Kyrie is as much at fault as some might suggest. If Kyrie does not re-sign this offseason, this trade could end up being just another really bad move by the front office, and not so much because of Kyrie himself. It was a high-risk move with no foresight. Dorian Finney-Smith was part of the package, and the Mavericks really miss his defensive presence because of his length at 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan and his ability to switch on to multiple guys. Yes, Finney-Smith did regress, but he was still the best defender on the team, and the Mavericks traded him away just to pair up Luka with another perennial all-star, which was never what the Mavericks actually needed to take the next step. Kyrie is still a scoring machine, but it's well known that he's not going to bolster anyone's defense. The Mavericks also gave up more depth by sending Spencer Dinwiddie back to Brooklyn in that trade. While watching the Mavericks lose to the Sixers, in which they led 62-57 at halftime, Jeff Van Gundy made a point that when the Sixers perimeter players get blown by, at least Joel Embiid is the last line of defense, while for the Mavericks, they don't have a last line of defense, which again is something that falls on the guys at the top for not doing what they need to do to get after that. I cannot go without talking about Luka Luka Doncic, a guy who came into the league as a child prodigy playing in the EuroLeague since he was 13 years old. Well, despite his 32.4 points, 8 assists, and 8.6 rebounds per game, his defense is horrible. Just pathetic. When you're given Kyrie Irving, you have no excuse to not even make the play-in tournament, period. Luka at least does acknowledge that he does need to be better on defense, and here's his quote: "Sometimes it's really hard for me to play really hard on both ends, but obviously the defensive end, I gotta be way better." Well, Luka is only 24 years old, so he should have the energy to compete on both ends of the floor, especially when Luka is a statue on offense when he doesn't have the ball. He should also maybe try getting back on defense instead of whining to the refs all the time when he doesn't get the call. He's already among the league leaders in free throw attempts anyways. Now let's talk about Jason Kidd. I thought he was terrible in Milwaukee. When the Mavericks hired him, I decided to give him a chance and thought maybe he learned from being Frank Vogel's assistant, and last year it looked like maybe he did. It seemed like he had a lot to do with the Mavericks defense improving drastically, but this year the defense fell off a cliff. While yes, the personnel is different, this sounds like a repeat of his tenure in Milwaukee, where the Bucks were 4th in defense his first year and were never even average defensively again, let alone elite, until he got fired. Jason Kidd was not creative with what he was given and decided to just let Luka do whatever he wants and play a ton of iso ball with no ball movement, while also giving some very odd answers for why he's doing things a certain way in press conferences, which dates back to his days in Milwaukee. For example, when the Mavericks blew a 27-point lead to my Lakers and he didn't call timeout throughout the second quarter while the Lakers were on a 10-2 run to finish the first half.
Runs on the Lakers were making big runs like at the end of the second quarter. What's your mentality or your thought process in not calling a timeout when the Lakers are making?
Yeah, I'm not the savior here. I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
Way to hold yourself accountable. Another thing he did that no one in their right mind should think will work is having Reggie Bullock guard power forwards. Even in this era where we have a lot of stretch fours, he is a 6'6" small forward. He should not be asked to guard bigger players when defending the perimeter is what he's good at. Another problem with him is oftentimes when the Mavericks aren't able to hold on to a lead, Jason Kidd waits until after the other team takes the lead to call a timeout. Then he doesn't change the lineup. There's also Josh Green, who he asked to guard 2 players at once a lot, and that disallowed him to do what he does best, which is defend the passing lanes. Steal numbers are not always a great way to evaluate defense, but when averaging the same number of steals as last year while playing 10 more minutes per game can tell you something. He's not being utilized properly. I'd also say Jason Kidd messed with Josh Green's confidence. After Josh Green earned the starting job for a little while, Jason Kidd gave Justin Holiday Josh Green's starting job after one good game against one of the worst teams in the league in the Spurs. Justin Holiday was a midseason signing, and after one good game, he was just not any good after that. I've also seen some severe lapses in communication on defense in the games I've watched during this downfall, and this is something that definitely does fall on Jason Kidd. I'm sure the Mavericks hired Jason Kidd because of his reputation as a player's coach, while Rick Carlisle is more old school. The fact that Giannis said he was devastated when the Bucks fired Kidd probably bolstered Jason Kidd's reputation as a player's coach. However, Jason Kidd has been a disappointment in this respect. Christian Wood said during training camp that he didn't know he was coming off the bench until he heard it from the media.
This is my first time hearing about it. Thank you.
Coaches should be able to communicate with their players better than that. That's one of their most important jobs. To recover from this mess, the Mavericks need to nail their 10th overall pick, and they need to address their rebounding and defense in the offseason. Jalen Brunson also isn't the first player Mark Cuban let walk only to see them do amazing things for another team. He did this with Steve Nash, who became a 2-time MVP in Phoenix. He did it with the 2011 championship team's defensive anchor Tyson Chandler, who went on to win Defensive Player of the Year for the Knicks. It took 10 years for the Mavericks to even win a playoff series after the 2011 championship because Mark Cuban and the front office were just not able to do what they needed to do to get better outside of last year. Mark Cuban probably won't sell the team, but he can help the Mavericks improve by just staying out of personnel decisions. It's not just Mark Cuban though, and it's not even just basketball. When owners get involved with personnel decisions, bad things do usually happen. It'll be an offseason to look out for the Mavericks. Will Jason Kidd get fired? I personally don't think he will yet. However, if the Mavericks don't significantly improve next year, then Jason Kidd's probably gone. Will Kyrie Irving come back? What moves do you think the Mavericks should make to improve their defense and their rebounding? Love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure if you watched my Lakers video and heard me say I'm glad the Lakers didn't trade for Kyrie, him not being that much to blame for the Mavericks' downfall and him not being what the Lakers need are both true statements, just to clear that up. So that's where I'll wrap it up. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be much appreciated, and if you could please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss another video. Welcome to the team. Your support is much appreciated. Links to my social media are down below. Also, if you want to comment who you have winning the finals and want to discuss the playoffs in the comments, I'm all for that too. So if you want to click either of these videos up above, my most recent video and the video that YouTube recommends, that'd be much appreciated as well. I'm sure you'll enjoy either one. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.